Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Adam Temple, CEO and CTO of Evolved Extraction. Thank you very much for joining me today, Adam.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
All right, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Adam, I always like to start to get a little bit more, to learn a little bit more about how you came to the industry. So how did you get your start in the cannabis industry?
Absolutely. Well, I was growing medical cannabis under Canada's MMAR program in about 2010, 2012. And during that time, I was actually in university, and the Canadian government had made announcements of plans to create what they called the MMPR program, which was the world's first federally commercialized cannabis industry proposal, essentially. That was obviously a huge opportunity. You know, I was already a medical grower, had a lot of expertise and a lot of passion for growing cannabis at that time. And I was taking business school, and this was just an opportunity of a lifetime. So I went for that, one of the licenses. Unfortunately, only I think 12 licenses were granted in the entire country in the first 2 or 3 years. But over time, that transitioned into obviously a much larger economic system for cannabis in Canada. And I think we have roughly 800 authorized licensed producers here in Canada. And during that kind of period in between, I had the realization that cannabis at its core is an agricultural product. And the real kind of future of cannabis was going to be in kind of more of a consumer packaged good. Like when you go to the grocery store, the grocery store is full of agricultural products, but they're processed into consumer products. And so that's kind of where I saw the industry headed. And I started to do as much as I can to learn about what was available for extraction at that time. And that was around 2012. There wasn't really much available. There was a few people online. Shout out to Grey Wolf, who now I'm working on another project with. But at that time, Grey Wolf was this kind of pseudonymous character online who was helping to create the first hydrocarbon extraction systems out of brewery parts. And so I was involved in a community of online extractors that were working together and collaborating and making small incremental innovations that later became what we use today as the commercial hydrocarbon extraction systems that are available.
Do you still grow?
Unfortunately, I had to give up growing to pursue my career in engineering and constructing extraction systems for the market. But I definitely still have a passion for it, and I miss it.
What is Evolved Extraction Solutions?
So Evolved Extraction Solutions is a service provider and a product machine builder that we develop extraction equipment for the cannabis space. And we take a service-based approach where we start with our clients' needs. We design our equipment into their facility, do full site planning kind of services, and then move into actually commissioning those systems and installing them for our clients. We also have butane and propane filling plants across Canada, one in Ontario and near Toronto, and one near Vancouver in British Columbia, where we provide regular consumable service as far as deliveries of butane, propane, and all the ancillary products that you need to keep an extraction facility up and running, such as the replacement gaskets, the filtration medias, the filter papers. We warehouse actually up to about 800 of those product SKUs in 2 warehouses across Canada.
At what point did the career evolve from this team that you had on online forums into, all right, I need to found a business?
Yeah, actually, that's a funny story because how it actually evolved, no pun intended, was that I was actually building extractors because I wanted to do my own extractions. I had patients that I was serving under the MMAR, and I wanted to concentrate these the oils that came from kind of the trim that we were producing. And I tried doing water hash. That was really, really labor intensive at that time. I know there's better technology available now, but didn't work out for me. So I started with building butane extractors out of brewery parts, with this community to produce my own extracts. Mm-hmm. I quickly realized that to actually build these machines, I needed parts from vendors worldwide. Like I was bringing stuff from China, I was bringing stuff from Europe, I was bringing stuff up from the States into Canada. And this was really expensive to ship all this stuff. And there wasn't really anywhere to get it locally. And so I realized that actually the shipping was costing me more than the actual products. So I was like, okay, well, to order 10 of these actually only cost me twice as much as ordering one. So why don't I order 10 of them at a time? And so I started stockpiling this stuff. I had a little warehouse in Abbotsford, British Columbia, where I was stockpiling parts and, the consumable stuff that I needed and all the gaskets and clamps. And word got out about my little stockpile. And I started having friends that, they were in a similar situation. And, hey, I know you have this spool that I need. Can I come? I really, really need it. Or my pump broke down. And at that time, the pumps for hydrocarbon extraction were particularly unreliable. And so I had about 3 or 4 of them, and people would come and beg me to be able to dive into my stockpile. And that's kind of when I realized, actually, I'm spending a lot on parts and equipment, and maybe there's a business here. And so we decided to partner with a few of my friends, and we opened up kind of a parts depot. And that was kind of the first iteration. Later on, we brought on engineering team and developed some of the first commercially available, compliant cannabis extraction equipment for the Canadian market.
What was that shift like when all of a sudden you decided that, you didn't want to just be assembling products with off-the-shelf components, but actually, manufacturing systems in-house? What was that transition like?
It was challenging for sure. I think each one of these transitions from going from, we were in a tiny little warehouse that was, I think, 500 square feet, and I had 2 employees, to we rented a warehouse that was 10,000 square feet. And so that was like a 10x growth in kind of square footage over a very short period of time. And everybody that was working at the company at the time thought I was absolutely nuts. And but it gave us the resources to be able to bring on those capabilities. And this was still at a time where cannabis was not federally legal for adult use in Canada yet. So the market was still very small for kind of regulated types of extraction machines. And so it took us, at least 2 or 3 years to do the design and to get our manufacturing where it needed to be. Now we've got ethanol extraction systems in 3 countries around the world.
Do you have an engineering background? You had said that you were going to business school. Where did all that design work or the design background come from?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, hired in from other from employees and stuff that I've learned from talent that we brought in house. And I do have a business partner that is a professional engineer who really is the kind of the brains behind the technology that we have now.
So it started as a 500 square foot warehouse and 2 employees. Where are you at now?
Well, we have 3 facilities across Canada. Right now I'm at our Toronto location. I think we're at probably just about 17,000 square feet between 3 locations.
Wow. So I read that personally, and as a company, you guys like to, quote, evaluate the merits and drawbacks of new and existing extraction solutions. So what new extraction technology has you excited?
Definitely the most exciting thing right now is the crystallization technology.
Okay.
What we're seeing a lot of is people bypassing a lot of steps that used to be required. Let's kind of look at, maybe a typical process to get to distillate. The most popular oil ingredient product being distillate still today. You might do an extraction, dissolve into ethanol, winterize, recover the ethanol, decarboxylate, do a first pass distillation, do a second pass distillation, then you have a refined product. That's a lot of steps. That's like 7 steps. The process that we have developed now is actually a patented process. And it's for a rapid crystallization of the THCA. And that actually takes place in the extraction process. So going from biomass, extracting that crude with a solvent, what we use is butane and propane, a blend of the two, and then collecting that micella into a tank and evaporating off the solvent up to a certain point where the viscosity is just right for the process. What happens after that is a very cold propane is injected into that highly viscous crude oil, and that causes a chain reaction of rapid crystallization that's controlled. Actually, a lot of people are having unwanted crystallizations that are happening rapidly when they're trying to make diamonds, and that's kind of a thing that is a little bit pervasive in the industry right now. The difference with this is that you're in full control of it. It's an intentional reaction that's taking place. And what it allows you to do is isolate the THCA in the extraction process itself, then wash the THCA with additional cold butane. Once the THCA is crystallized, it's no longer soluble in cold butane the same way it would be when it was in the plant material. And so then that terpene sauce can be washed off into another vessel. And so you have, just from one process, in one machine, you have isolated terpene sauce and a powderized, essentially, THCA crystal. Now the beauty of that is that raw ingredients, THCA, can basically be turned into any product. It is the raw material for pretty much every concentrate product, and even a lot of other products as well, like edibles, and it's really great for, especially in the powder form, it's really great for pre-rolls. The Infuse PreRoll market is really, really starting to take off, especially here in Canada. And so that's a fantastic kind of precursor or input material for any one of those products. And you can also recrystallize it into diamonds at a much faster rate. So because you're starting with this powderized THCA, you can recrystallize it using pentane. And what we found is that the pentane crystallizations are happening in less than a week, whereas some of our clients are having, they're growing diamonds and taking like 2 to 3 weeks. So speeding up the process by multiple fold. And that's saving a ton of space, increasing the potential throughput rates for the entire extraction process by eliminating those bottlenecks.
What is the name of that machine, the rapid crystallization machine?
It's called the genome crystallizer.
Okay. How long was that under development, and when did you recognize the opportunity to sort of cut out 6 to 7 steps out of the process with one machine?
Yeah, so my partner, Lyndon Noble, was the inventor of this process, and he actually first observed it, I think, in 2018. So it's been under development and just kind of incrementally scaling. The first iteration of it was like a mason jar, and then we gradually incrementally scaled it with like an alpha and beta version, and now we're manufacturing the commercial versions.
How many of those do you have out in the industry?
They're brand new. The first one is being manufactured right now for our innovation and demonstration facility in Guelph, Ontario. So we've set up like a really nice Class 1 Division 1 booth where we're going to be hosting people and training them on the new tech, offering consulting services, for the whole kind of supply chain management that comes along with that. One of the amazing benefits of doing the extractions with this way is that it allows you to expand the number of SKUs that you can offer to clients and be able to deliver them just in time, because you're able to isolate the THCA, isolate the terpenes, and have those stored. When you get an order for a specific SKU, you recombine them and you can put together that order very quickly without having to store inventory of each of those SKUs. And so that is a huge, obviously, cash advantage, really improving cash flows, as well as reducing potential errors when it comes to demand planning for what, when dispensaries order, are they going to order twice as much of the thing of, SKU A and half as much of SKU B? Well, that may be very difficult to predict. And the cannabis industry moves really fast with consumer preferences. So the ability to pivot and to say, okay, well, we have 20 SKUs that we can make from these two ingredients. When we get an order, we'll put that together and it's out with the next day. That's a really amazing capability.
Yeah, that's true. Just-in-time manufacturing in cannabis, and I haven't really heard of that before.
Exactly. So what we try and help our clients do is just-in-time on the fulfillment side of their business, and then on the extraction side of the business, you don't want to be just-in-time. You want to be able to take advantage of when there's biomass available at the prices that you want it, and so and not just the prices, but the quality and that's something that you can't necessarily control. It's outside of it's upstream in the supply chain. So you want to be able to take advantage of when there's a batch that it comes from, a preferred vendor, or when there's something available that is, on a fire sale. You want to take advantage of that and you want to process it as quickly as possible, but you don't necessarily want to have all the finished inventory afterwards. So you're kind of separating the upstream supply chain from the downstream supply chain and improving efficiency in that manner.
So it's an exciting time with the product launch. Is there any, not apprehension, but, how do you think the market's going to respond to something that's such a disruptive technology?
It's been pretty exciting, the response that we've gotten so far. Right now, I'm trying not to, do too much publicity about it, just because we want some of our kind of closer clients to have the first to get the first installs, and we're going to have to ramp up as well. But definitely, every time I make a post, I really like LinkedIn. So if you guys are on LinkedIn, definitely connect with me on there. I'll send you my my account to publish. But every time I make a post on LinkedIn, I'm just getting kind of inundated with messages about it. So the response so far seems to be really, really exciting. And the biggest challenge is going to be keeping up with all the inquiries.
So on one of the posts, you had written that you don't believe that there is a superior extraction method for all applications. Is that shifting?
No, I think that that's still the case. I think from my experience, the clients that we have that have been the most successful have been the ones that have multiple methods. They have cold ethanol extraction for the very inexpensive biomass. Distillate's still very, very popular, right? If you can make it cheap, it's going to sell. There's a huge market for it, and there's a ton of products that need it. Water hash is a thing, segment that's going, and there's consumer demand for it. The ones able to understand that maybe this batch of biomass is not going to perform that well in a water extraction, but this batch C, the trichome heads are kind of perfectly suited for this, and the terpene content is there, so we're going to do that. And batch A, It has that high terpene content, but maybe the trichomes are not at the maturity level that we need it to be for water hash. So let's turn that into, let's do an extraction and do a crystallization and capture the terpene sauce with that. And then, batch D is a really low grade, kind of a batch that got botched to some degree, and we're just going to make distillate out of it. To be able to have that flexibility that you can take advantage of opportunities in the supply chain as a processor. That's a critical piece for being profitable and having that flexibility of multiple types of processes and understanding when to implement them. That is, I think, what we're seeing as being the most successful approach.
When you talk about, batches being botched, where are cannabis processors falling down when it comes to specific extraction techniques?
Where cannabis processes are falling down,
or maybe common challenges that you're encountering or that you're seeing out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I would say just kind of excessive amounts of labor being required for processes, not taking a step back and thinking, okay, can we systemize this in a way that that reduces our labor by 75%, for example? Like, I've gone to many facilities where there is literally 3 times as many employees running a process as they need. If they just had a set of pneumatically controlled valves, a bunch of tanks instead of moving kegs from one process to another, that whole thing can be streamlined very, very easily, and the technology is there. And that's one of the things. One of the services that we offer is kind of a consulting and solution design service that is kind of a custom engineering, and we'll do that as on an hourly basis. We're not exclusively focused on selling our own kind of designed products. We like to get in there and just be of value to our clients, and sometimes that just sometimes it doesn't actually require spending much money on hardware. Sometimes it's just a matter of piping one tank to another tank with a pneumatic pump and a switch that controls it, and that saves an extra 10 minutes a day times 25 days a month, and those numbers add up, especially if you do 10 or 15 of those little improvements and kind of streamline the production process.
Well, those services and the configurator that you have online, I find those particularly exciting because it's been my experience that no 2 facilities are ever alike.
Exactly. And that's one of the main things the main challenges that we see with our clients when they're either trying to start a facility or they are trying to make upgrades and improve their facility. Well, they're trying to decide on what the right equipment is for their facility. But the challenge is that you actually want to do the facility design simultaneous to the selection of the equipment. You have to understand the electrical specifications of the equipment, match that to the facility's electrical requirements. You have to do evaluations of the hazardous location. You have to do evaluations of the fire code. All these things should be done at the same time. And what we find is that leads to a lot of roadblocks for clients. They're trying to make improvements to their process. There's things that they know that they don't know, and there's things that they don't know that they don't know. And they're coming up against these things that are inhibiting them from making that decision of what's the right equipment, or they're making a rush decision and then finding out after the fact that they made a wrong decision. And so what we found is that starting with a service, doing these evaluations, providing the reports, the building code, the fire code reports, the electrical design, and doing these all together with the client in a systemized step-by-step process gives them all the tools that they need to make their decisions. And it really adds that kind of comfort level that you're not going to make a really bad, expensive mistake and buy the wrong equipment.
Has that shifted at all in the last few years where A few years ago, there was sort of that rush to market, as fast as possible to, whereas now, is there a more metered or systematic approach?
Absolutely. Most areas or regions are not in that initial setup phase anymore. They're in the highly competitive phase. And so a lot of the work that we're getting is helping them outcompete by reducing costs, improving efficiency. And, a lot of the time that's not necessarily a sale. It's more of, a service. And so it really just, it's been a pivot for us as well. But it's a pivot that is much, much more enjoyable because we can build very close relationships with our clients. And that's really our business has always been designed in that way, where we're trying to maximize our usefulness to our clientele. And that's been, it's just really been a pleasure. And it's also been a lot more creative because we can work on a lot of different problems and help more companies.
Well, that's one of the things that I found interesting as well, is that you're not only selling, just equipment, but everything seems to be scalable. So you can follow the business based on their size all the way through, whether or not they become, a large MSO in the States.
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we've learned over the last few years as well, is that there's been a number of, I think it's kind of shifting back, but early on in the growth of the cannabis industry, everybody thought that they were going to be, 2 or 3 times as big as they were. And maybe overlooked the fact that there was probably 3 times more competitors than they thought that there was. And so, a lot of the equipment was oversized. Some equipment was oversized to the extent where it was completely unworkable. You could only process. I've been to a facility in Canada where it would only really make sense to run the machine. And when I say machine, I'm talking about kind of industrial scale production plant. In 3 10,000 square foot rooms. It would only make sense to turn it on if you had 5 tons to process.
Right.
And so, that's an extreme example of way oversizing. Some of the more successful companies that we've seen actually were the ones that were a little bit leaner. And interestingly, in some cases, almost a curse of having too much money. Too much capital to throw at a problem, and the companies that were constrained by capital actually had to be a lot more creative and innovative in how they're going to attack the problems. And now those are the companies that we're doing a lot of work with as well to kind of incrementally scale up. And so one of the approaches that's been quite successful is starting with the system that is the amount of processing capacity that you need on day one. Not what you think you're going to need, a year and a half from now. But because we take the service-based approach, what we can do is we can design your facility and your electrical system and your ventilation for the third phase or for the, second phase, and scale it back so that phase 1 doesn't cost you much. But then when you go into phase 2 and phase 3, you're not going back into construction. That's what you don't want. You don't want to be turning your production facility into a construction site. So the way to do that is you start by designing a 3-phase design right from day one. And then you start by, you install the electrical for your third phase, and you install the ventilation and potentially some of the rooms. And then you go ahead and you buy the equipment for your first phase. So you might even be able to start with $200,000. And then as you get cash flow and as you get customers, and as you find out where your niche is that you're most, competitive, then you reinvest into that niche. And, we're there every step of the way, helping you kind of make those incremental improvements, and adding that piping that goes from one process to the next, adding those pneumatic valves and the controls that control that process, and kind of incrementally getting you to your third phase filled up.
You told us about the genome. It seems like the other sort of premier piece of equipment that you guys have is the EVMass ethanol extraction platform. Can you tell me a little bit more about the EVMass and how it serves your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Primarily, for running products into distillate. That's typically what most of our clients are using it for. It's a centrifuge-based extraction system. What kind of sets it apart from other ethanol extraction systems on the market is that all the modules are integrated, and so it all operates in a closed loop. We custom design that closed loop specifically to your budget and to your needs, and with the thought process of, okay, where are you planning to be on your third phase of growth, and being able to add a module incrementally that will get you to that third phase, and having all that stuff kind of piped into each other to create that closed loop extraction process. The beauty of it is that you can get started for under $200,000, and you're able to process well over 100 pounds a day with an entry level system, and you can scale that all the way up to about 500 or 600 pounds a day with the falling film evaporators and additional chilling capacity. The other innovation of this system is that you're able to prepare and chill solvent for future batches. So if you're running batch A, you're chilling the solvent for batch A, but you're also chilling the solvent for batch B, so that when you're done with batch A, your solvent's already ready for the next one. And then you're kind of switching back and forth with two chilling tanks. That allows you to never have to sit and wait for your solvent to chill down. Solvent chilling is a big bottleneck in ethanol extraction, and for our system, it really isn't something that you ever have to wait for.
I understand that having parts on hand is part of the beginning of the business, but why is it important to still be a big part of the business?
It really goes hand in hand with our services.
Yeah.
If you're having kind of trying to make a process improvement, and we need that piping and we need those clamps and those valves to be all in stock to be able to quickly implement that improvement and not have to wait 12 weeks for things to ship. The other thing that we see a lot of, pardon me, especially with our competitors, is they're having equipment breakdowns and they're not stocking the replacement. And that's a huge failure, in my opinion, because one of these processing plants, it's not uncommon to be producing $200,000 to $1 million worth of oil or end products in a day. So if it takes you 4 weeks to get a process back up and going, do the math. That what is your opportunity cost during that period? So what a lot of people have some of the processes that I've talked to have even started to actually buy backup machines, and sometimes just buying used machines off the aftermarket and just sitting them in a storage room and taking parts off of them so that they don't have to have their process down. And to me, that's kind of crazy, because for us, it's our responsibility to make sure that our processors are up and running. Right. And so if there's something goes down, it's like call me at 9:00 at night and we're getting you up and running tomorrow. That's the responsibility of a business that's servicing these processors, because the margins are slim and it's all about volume. And so you can't have downtime. Downtime is the enemy.
Has that helped you skirt some of the supply chain problems that other people have run into the past year or two?
We've run into supply chain problems. It's a universal problem in North America. But yeah, it has been definitely lessened by the fact that we've invested quite a bit into our inventory and our inventory management systems.
What kind of ROI are people looking at when they invest in something like the EVMass or the genome?
There's a lot of variability, especially when it comes to market. We're really excited about the New York market that's coming online. You're going to have a lot higher ROI in the first, probably year in New York than you are going to have if you're implementing something like that in a more competitive developed market like Canada. And so, with every one of that's actually part of the service that we offer is, doing kind of an analysis and an evaluation of upgrades and investments. And sometimes, a small upgrade that doesn't cost a lot of hardware cost, but maybe just a reconfiguration of how the piping is done or a new manifold can deliver pretty significant ROI. And then, if you're implementing a crystallization process that speeds up that, or potentially it frees up capital that's tied up in your inventory because now you're doing just-in-time shipments. Well, maybe your ROI is not actually in a P&L. Maybe it's on your balance sheet because now you have less. You have to have less SKUs in your inventory, and those SKUs are $3 million worth of inventory. So that frees up working capital for the rest of your business. So the way that you calculate ROI can really vary depending on what market you're in and what your goals are.
What is your approach as new markets open up in the States as to getting out there and trying to figure out, trying to find new clients?
We get a lot of our clients through referrals. So right now, that's kind of the primary avenue that we're that's getting us these projects. We used to do a lot of trade shows. We found the market's kind of shifted a little bit from the big giant trade show to a little bit more intimate and community oriented types of events. So that's kind of the direction that we start to do a little bit more events, and a little bit more kind of the smaller events are the ones that seem to be a little bit more enjoyable, where you can really build business relationships. Our business is all about relationships, so definitely looking for those kind of more intimate networking events that are really about meeting fellow processors and people in the industry.
So will you be going to MJ Biz in November, or is that something that you guys skip?
We're going to skip it this year, but we'll be back again next year.
Okay. Yeah, I did notice on your site that it seemed like you were doing more of those smaller regional shows. Is it just because you have more time for one-on-one conversations? What is it about those events that you think makes them more successful?
I think we can be a little bit more targeted with what region that we want to work in. Okay. For us, we're located in the we were in the Pacific Northwest out in Vancouver area, and then near Toronto, we're bordering on a number of states, and so those are kind of our primary regions that we're interested in working with, is kind of within that truck driving 8-hour distance kind of thing. Okay. From our home bases, where we can offer that kind of higher level of service and be consistent with it.
What are your thoughts on the current state of the Canadian cannabis market?
It's an interesting time. It's a very interesting time. Not everything plays out the way that you think it's going to. It's one of the interesting things that one of the interesting developments I would say recently is how big kind of the low end concentrate market has been. We kind of made the presumption that, and I think this probably will play out maybe over a longer period of time, but what you see in California, or have seen on the West Coast, primarily being like consumer preferences have moved towards like high terpene extracts and a little bit higher quality, even vape cartridges, concentrates. That's been popular and it's growing quickly, but the most popular thing is the cheapest possible thing you can buy. There's hash available on the OCS, which is the Ontario Cannabis Store. It's interestingly in Canada, for your US viewers. The main distributor for Ontario and for other provinces is a provincial body. So it's actually the provincial government, what we call a crown corporation, and they distribute the cannabis products to the retailers. They also have online stores, so you can go on their website and check out what products are available. But there's $10 a gram hash. And sometimes this is made with, mostly it's just like keef and byproducts, like other byproducts that could not be used for we're not even going to say premium products. I'm just going to say like standard products. Stuff that we used to consider throwing in the garbage is now just kind of getting squished together into a hash product, and it's sold for $10 a gram. And that's a retail price. So, and that's popular. And, that was kind of one thing that surprised me. It's like, wow, people want just the absolute cheapest thing possible with no consideration for the quality of it.
Right. It's like the cannabis hot dog.
I love hot dogs personally, so
Hey,
it kind of is. I like the analogy. Because that's exactly what it is, right? It's all the byproducts put squished together and then extruded into a tube.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not hating on it either. I'm not.
You can't hate if it sells. Honestly, that's the reality of your market, right? So, I mean, you can. There's also the other side of the equation with the people that are the snobs, and nothing will satisfy them other than like 99% pure trichome heads, and but ultimately, not very many people are buying that, and it really shows you how price sensitive the market is.
How would U.S. federal legalization impact your business as well as the Canadian market, in your opinion?
Well, I am really looking forward to that. I don't see it having a huge impact on the Canadian market, potentially taking away some of our opportunities to export. It would be detrimental in that sense to some of our clients here. Overall, I think Evolved is really, really well positioned for the U.S. federal legalization. The Canadian cannabis market is much more highly regulated than the U.S. So Health Canada is a federal body, very similar to the FDA, and so if you do tours of the facilities here, they're built to basically GMP standards. They're built to a standard that you could produce pharmaceuticals in these facilities, and so we had to transition from serving kind of like the what we call the legacy medical market to basically the highest standard for recreational or cannabis products globally, and that was a challenge. But now that we have kind of worked in that environment, we really understand these requirements, and we built all of our equipment to kind of like a 3A sanitary standard. We can do GMP standards as well, and that's one of the big advantages to offering our products along with the service, is that a lot of this stuff is integrating your equipment into your quality management systems. And so having a lot of experience with that with our clients up here is really what's going to set us apart when these companies are going to need to be FDA compliant. And from my experience, there's a lot of equipment and a lot of facilities that are going to need to get rebuilt to meet those standards. And I think our services especially are going to be really valued during that transition process.
Talking about the equipment, you have a demonstration center that's coming online soon. What can you tell us about that and where it's going to be, what to expect from the center?
Yeah, so it's in Guelph, Ontario. We've got a 40-foot by 10-foot C1D1 extraction booth where we're doing ethanol, heptane, butane, and propane extractions, as well as the crystallizations. Really, the main reason for the center is to have fun and play with new technology and innovate and develop, because we love doing that. It's kind of like a playground for our engineers. They call it their recreation center, actually. But ultimately, from the market perspective, we're really looking forward to hosting, as many guests as we can to not just to demonstrate the technology, but also to train people and provide, consulting services on different process innovations that we're working on, two of which being obviously the crystallization that we talked about, but also heptane extraction. We've developed a new version of the EVMass system that's able to operate with heptane and do low temperature evaporations. And the beauty of that is that you can actually extract live resin or extract fresh frozen biomass. Here in Canada, we have kind of an abundance of fresh frozen biomass because some of the growers didn't have the infrastructure to dry it and trim it. And so the ability to process that on a bit of a bigger scale using a centrifugal extraction process allows you to get through that biomass like 100 pounds an hour rather than some of these extraction, the traditional hydrocarbon butane propane extraction. You're going to end up with a bit of a higher quality resin from that. Higher terpene and especially preserving all the monos. But if you really want to get through a lot of it, then heptane extraction is a pretty interesting approach. And we've developed a new falling film evaporator that can boil it off at a very low temperature.
You had mentioned that you started off in the industry growing. Do you have a personal connection to the cannabis industry?
You know what? Like growing up, I think I just really found my passion for it. I did have some kind of back injuries as well as a young adult, and really got to experience for myself how valuable it can be from a medicinal standpoint, and the impact that it had for my patients and the gratitude that they had was really I think it was very moving. I really kind of built on my passion for the plant. But I think also one of the really attractive things about it was just kind of like the counterculture elements of it. We had an amazing cannabis community in Western Canada that really drove and pushed the change at the government level. Challenged in Canada, we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is kind of like a constitution, and challenging the charter with these court cases. And I think probably one of the most interesting things about that is it showed me how powerful the citizenry can be in causing change, especially when there's laws that are not necessarily just. And so, I think it was very impactful for me to kind of witness that the power that can have.
Do you keep in touch with some of that core group that helped push that change?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of them have made, the more professional ones have made the transition into, whatever field of the cannabis industry they've been able to build businesses in. And some of the best processors in Canada were renegade processors, or what we call legacy market. And some of the most successful licensed companies here, especially in Ontario, were the ones that recognize the talent. And there's kind of two cultures, what I call the Procter and Gamble culture. And then there's the culture of processors that understood, and they had the business savvy. They had the corporate culture of like a strong work ethic and a strong, business foundation and business structure. But then they also recognize the value of the expertise that was developed prior to legalization. And those were the companies that did the best. So a lot of the people that I knew pre-legalization have made that transition, and they're some of the most successful and respected people in the legal segment now.
Your machines are used to create a lot of products that are out on the industry. Do you have one in particular that's your favorite?
I would say Infuse PreRolls. That's probably, yeah. I was really surprised actually when I smoked my first one. Because I'm not like I don't like the strongest product all the time, but the just the pull and how thick the smoke was, I was pretty much sold immediately. And so some of our clients are now doing some really cool stuff with Infuse PreRolls, where they're doing they call it a donut, and so it's essentially like either live resin or distillate that is injected into the center of the cone. Mm-hmm. And then when you smoke that, then it melts into the flower and just creates this super, super thick smoke. And that's a pretty outstanding product.
Before we get out of here, and thank you very much for taking the time today, man. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about Evolved or yourself, or what to look forward to in the future?
Yeah, just know that we're always here to take your calls. So if you're interested in anything we talked about, absolutely reach out to us. We're super community oriented, and I think also kind of catering to a little bit more of the professionalism in the industry as well. And so if that appeals to you, please reach out to us, through LinkedIn or through visiting our website. And we're always open to have visitors, especially once our demonstration center opens probably in November 2022.
Excellent. Well, Adam, thanks again for taking the time. And I hope we get a chance to do it again soon.
Thanks. You as well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right. For Adam Temple, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.